the real estate market actually increased by almost 30 to 40% within those 6 months. And yes, the unemployment numbers might seem on the media to come down to 5.7%. However, there is more to it and the numbers are staggering. We are in 2024 and this is not 2022. New immigrants are not able to find jobs and the business confidence being low. I strongly believe that the economy will contract in 2024. So it's taking more time to sell a house right now than it was in Jan of 2023. Because Bank of Canada will be reducing rates, there is a high likelihood of the market going up. Business growth actually is tapered. Because there's less access to money, they cannot invest into their business. The right question to ask here is, am I ready to buy? And the fourth and the most important thing that you need to avoid is real estate prices have started to go up and I'm slowly seeing panic creeping into the market and there is fear of missing out. So in today's video, we'll be dissecting whether it's worth panicking right now and if the recession has been cancelled or there's something more to it and what you and I should do in 2024. So let's get started. So in today's video, we'll be talking about three things. One is home prices are starting to go up. So is the recession cancelled? After that, we'll be talking about the real unemployment numbers and the correlation between recession and unemployment. And yes, the unemployment numbers might seem on the media to come down to 5.7%. However, there is more to it and the numbers are staggering. And finally, if you are a first-time home buyer, we'll be talking about what you should do in today's market. So for anyone who is new to this market and don't know what happened in 2022, in the first half of 2022, specifically in the first quarter or the last half of 2021, what happened was that the real estate market had a sudden surge which was massive. The real estate market actually increased by almost 30 to 40% within those 6 months, and there was incredible amount of FOMO that crept into this market. The biggest contributor to that was the record low interest rates. You could actually get a mortgage to as low as 1%. Right now the interest rates are over 5%. The days on market for any house was on average of 16 days, which is amazing. Right now it's over 50 days. And during the phase of January, February, March, which is historically the slowest months, there were a total of 10,000 homes that were being sold every single month. Just for context, in January of 2024, there were only 4,000 homes that were sold. Now, the numbers that I'm showing are real numbers of our home that we bought in 2020. So we bought the house for $635,000, the house that we live in right now. We bought it for $635,000 in November of 2020. And what happened was at the peak of the market around March of 2022, there was a similar house that got sold for $991,000. That's a massive increase in just a space of less than 1.5 years. And right now the same house is worth about $687,000 and that's a more palatable number. But what happened in this FOMO market was that because the interest rates were lower and Bank of Canada did not show any indication of the interest rates coming down, people started to overpay for the homes and there was a sudden buying frenzy at that time. And this buying frenzy saw the homes increase in value by over 50%, which obviously was unsustainable. Now, if you look at the media articles right now, there's something similar that's coming up in the news right now. These are a few news articles where it says that Toronto listings are racking up multiple offers. You must have seen a lot of realtors, a lot of people actually saying that there are 42 offers on a particular house, 43 offers on a particular house. Right now, there are homes which are being sold for $200,000 to $300,000 over asking. And because Bank of Canada has indicated that the interest rate drops will happen very soon, it looks like the buying frenzy is back. However, there's a lot more to these multiple offers and these houses going $200,000 to $300,000 over asking. For that, let's go to House Sigma and look at a particular listing. Alright, so we have House Sigma here. What we do is we just type in 108 Applewood, which is Applewood Crescent in Whitby. And we look at this. I'm just taking this as an example here. So what you can see here is it was listed for $799,000 and it sold for $950,000, which is $50,000 over asking, and this is just sold 1 day ago. If you look at the house, it's pretty upgraded. It's a pretty decent house. You know, kitchen is slightly dated, but overall the house is very, very upgraded. You will see that, you know, the living room, it's staged very well. That's another thing. That's one of the things that we should avoid as investors, especially even as first-time home buyers. If the house is very well staged, then obviously it will have multiple offers. So that's something that I always, counsel people not to look at. houses that are very poorly staged, they are the best ones to buy because you don't get a lot of bidding here. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is that yes, it went for over $150,000, over asking. However, if you look at the comparables of this particular house, so what I do here is, I just clicked on this map here. So I clicked on this map, and then we go on sold in the last 90 days and detached houses that were sold in the last 90 days. So this is the house which was sold for $950,000, which is again, $150,000 over. But if you look at the detached houses, which are similar, 3 bedroom, 3 bath. Now this particular house even has a basement. It doesn't have a kitchen, but you can make a kitchen and rent out the basement separately. But these houses are all going for almost $1 million. If you look at this house, it went for 1.2 million. Yes, it's a bigger house. But if you look at the, houses, similar houses, 3 bedroom, 4 bedrooms, they're all going for over $900,000. This house has gone for $800,000, but I'm pretty sure this is not very upgraded. See, this is not very upgraded, so there's no upgrades, old, finishing, everything is pretty old, so there'll be a lot of work that will be required in this house, and therefore this went for $800,000. Again, if you look at a little bit up, you have 1.15 million. It's a smaller house than the one that I was showing you. This is 1.1 million, but I think this has a rentable basement. Again, this is 1.1. So yes, this particular house sold for $950,000, and it gives an illusion that yes, $150,000, it was over, sold $150,000 over asking price. But honestly, the comparables were around this mark. So again, I'll highly recommend that you never go with the news articles and these headlines that are made, because they are very deceptive, and do your own research. All the tools, just like House Sigma, are available to you. The entire presentation that I'm making, this is all secondary source of information. There's nothing because I'm a mortgage agent, I have access to this data. You have the access to this data, or you work with a team who can actually give you those insights. And honestly, just like this house, there are a lot more houses that are selling over, $300,000 over asking, but that's not real numbers. They're just listed way below what they should be listed at, and they're just selling as per the comparables. Now, if you look at the stats for January of 2024, the GTA market, the average sold price is just over $1 million, and it's a decrease of 1.2% over last year. The detached market is up a little bit, semi-detached market is up a little bit, but freehold townhouses and condo apartments have gone down versus last year. Now, honestly, the numbers, whether it's up or down, 0.7, 1.8% is within 1 to 2%, whether it's up or down. So I won't say that there's a massive crash that has happened, or there's a massive increase in the market that has happened in the last 1 year at least, versus 2024 versus 2023. However, what you can see here, and this is what is showing in the headlines, is that the number of transactions have increased a lot. So if you look at, versus last year, 2023, January of 2023, the number of transactions are up 36%, and it's up to about 4,000 transactions per month. Now, this 36 number is even high if you look at townhouses, which is a starter home for most people, and the transactions are up 60% versus Jan of 2023. Now, yes, these things are making the headlines. 4223 is a big number. It's a big increase from last year, January of 2023. However, this is not the full story. Where we are right now, as for the number of transactions, is way lower than most months in the last 5 years. If you look at these numbers, the peaks were about May of 2023, when there were 9,000 homes that were being sold. In March of 2021, where there were 15,000 homes that were being sold in that particular month. And that was July of 2022, just after the pandemic. The first wave was, tapering down, and there were 11,000 homes that were being sold. And only 4 times in the last 5 years has there been lesser homes being sold than what was sold in January of 2024. Jan of 2019, April of 2020, which was the pandemic year, and the pandemic had just hit, and therefore the listings were lower, and therefore the number of houses on the market were lower, and therefore the transactions were lower. And then December and January of 2023, where there were 3,100 homes being sold. And then we also had December of 2023, where there were about 3,500 homes being sold. Now you'll see that December and January of every year, there is a dip. If you look at this, there was a dip here, there was a dip here, there was a dip here, there's a dip here. So every January and December, December and January, there is a dip. So there's absolutely nothing new about this. The only difference is in Jan of 2023, because the interest rates were increasing pretty fast, Bank of Canada was increasing interest rates almost every single sitting that they were doing every single month. Therefore, the sentiment was a lot lower, and therefore the number of listings were a lot lower, and therefore the number of transactions were a lot lower. But just because we are up from last year on the number of transactions, it doesn't mean that the buying frenzy is back. Besides, if you compare the days on market basically means that if a home is put on the market, how many days it takes to sell that home. The days on market right now is 54 days, up from 41 days. So it's taking more time to sell a house right now than it was in January of 2023. Now, please understand that these news articles do not tell the full story. If you delve into the data, it's not that bad. And of course, there's a trend that there is an increase in transactions. It's nowhere close to where it was in the last 2 years. But we obviously cannot ignore the fact that because Bank of Canada will be reducing rates, there is a high likelihood of the market going up. But what about recession? Is the recession completely over? Now, as I explained in my previous videos on recession, I've made a couple of them. If you want to look at those videos, they'll be linked in the description below. When the interest rates increase, what happens is that access to money dries up. What that means is, yes, if interest rates increase, your home mortgages are increasing as well, and therefore the eligibility is going down, and therefore there's less transactions in the market. However, the problem is more for businesses who are relying on line of credits. Your barber shop, your restaurants, all these guys are relying on line of credits, and because now the interest rates have increased, the access to money is also very expensive. What that does is business growth actually is tapered. Because there's less access to money, they cannot invest into their business. The amount of money that people are spending is any which ways reduced because of high unemployment and increased cost of living, and now the business growth is much lower, and that leads to a much lower business confidence. Right now the business confidence is lower than what it was in 2020, April of 2020, when the pandemic had hit. And what this does is it increases the amount of layoffs, and there are more hiring freezes, and businesses are no longer able to hire more people and do more innovation. And because of that, unemployment increases, people are not able to pay their mortgages, people are not able to pay rent, and therefore those investors are not able to make their mortgage payments, and this goes into a spiral, and that's what a recession is. However, again, the news articles say that Canada's economy has added 37,000 jobs, and therefore unemployment has declined by 0.1% to 5.7%. However, there are some other news articles which says that the small business confidence is at the lowest since April of 2020, and small businesses are not even able to afford their offices. For an example, the office that I'm shooting this right now, I actually got this 30% lower than market value. This is on rent, and I got 30% discount on the rent. The reason is that this office was on the market for 6 months, and the vacancy rate in downtown Kitchener right now is almost 20%. And the primary reason for this is that small businesses are not able to grow because of the higher interest rates. Besides, in the last 4 to 5 months, there are so many companies who have announced layoffs. Suncor, which is a massive company, all banks, BMO, RBC, TD, Bell recently announced that they are cutting off 4,800 jobs. That's massive, and that spurred a lot of political drama as well. And only 2 days ago, CP announced that they will be cutting 20% of their workforce. So on one hand, people are losing jobs, and on the other hand, we have news articles like these which gives an illusion that unemployment is not too bad. But again, numbers don't lie. This graph shows on a monthly basis how many jobs were created for the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, there have been almost 800,000 jobs that were created. However, the amount of immigration that happened was 1.4 million. So the population has increased by almost 1.5 million in the last 2 years, and we have only created 800,000 jobs. Now let's look at numbers which are even more staggering when it comes to unemployment. Now, as of January of 2024, and these numbers are from Statistics Canada, the labor force, the amount of people who are working in Canada are about 21.5 million. Now, let's break this 21.5 million, which is the overall number, the amount of people who are working right now, into employed full-time, employed part-time, and unemployed. Now, there will be some business people as well who are not taking a salary. I'm not including that here. I don't think we have a stat for that, but let's assume these are the numbers. But I think these numbers are very representative of what's happening right now. So as of January of 2024, out of the 21.5 million people who are working, 77% of people are working full-time. Then we have 17% of the workforce which is working part-time. This includes students, this includes people who cannot work full-time. So all that is included in the 17%. And there are 5.7% people who are unemployed. However, this is only one side of the coin. What is important to understand is how many people entered the workforce and what is the distribution amongst these three segments if you look at that. So in the last 1 year, there are over 500,000 people who have been added to the workforce. Of these, only 44% are employed full-time versus 77% of the total population. The new population that has entered the workforce, only 44% are working full-time. 23% are working part-time and a staggering 33% are unemployed. So yes, while the number of total unemployed is 5.7%, the amount of jobs that are being added is nowhere close to the amount of immigration that's happening and the amount of labor that's available to do those jobs. Now just club this with the high cost of living and more people working part-time or being unemployed, what's happening is that the rich are getting richer. If you look at the overall average annual income, and these numbers are a little bit dated for 2021 because this survey was done in 2021 and the latest numbers are not available. But again, this is very much representative of what's happening. I'm pretty sure it's happening in 2024, 2023 as well. So the average annual income was about 68,400, which is an increase of 2.5% over last year, which is 2020. However, if you look at the bottom 50%, people who are making minimum wage, people who are working part-time, they are making an average of $21,000 a year. And this is a reduction of 6% versus last year. That means that in 2020, these people were making more money than what they are making in 2021. However, let's look at the top 1% right now. These are the 1% earners, who are making over $500,000. This has increased by almost 10%. Their incomes have increased by almost 10%. It gets more staggering if you go to the top 0.1% who are making $2 million and their incomes have increased by 17%, and the top 0.01% who is making $7.5 million a year plus, their incomes have increased by almost 25%. So what's happening is the middle class and the lower class is getting squeezed right now because they're the most impacted by the high rents, because they're the most impacted when they lose their jobs. And the new immigrants who are coming and not being able to find jobs, 33% of the new immigrants that are coming that do not have jobs right now, they are unemployed. Those are all the numbers that are making things worse right now. So what does this mean for you and me? Number one, we are in 2024 and this is not 2022. The buying frenzy is not back yet. Number two, we are not out of a recession yet. Despite these news articles saying that there are higher transactions that are happening in January of 2024 and therefore there will be a huge surge in the market, it's not guaranteed. Because I still believe that because interest rates are still above 5%, because I still believe that because interest rates are still above 5%, there is a lot of unemployment, new immigrants are not able to find jobs, and the business confidence being low, I strongly believe that the economy will contract in 2024. New immigrants are not able to find jobs and the business confidence being low, I strongly believe that the economy will contract in 2024. Number three, it's 2024, it's election year in the US, 2025 is election year in Canada, and do not believe what you hear in the news because it's all politically driven. And number four, we are not seeing record numbers in real estate. In fact, the prices, the days on market, everything is much lower than what we have seen in the past. So if you are a home buyer, there's absolutely no need to panic right now. Now, yes, Canada has a supply shortage. Yes, the number of homes that are being built are way lower than the amount of population that is increasing. And yes, in general, long term, the Canadian real estate will always be resilient. It will always increase by 4 to 8%. And yes, if you wait for 5 to 10 years to buy your first real estate, you will lose out. However, we are not 5 to 10 years from now and it's still 2024 and the fundamentals are not yet pointing towards a massive surge in real estate. The only reason why the real estate will go up is because there'll be more FOMO in the market and people who do not understand economics will be buying houses that they should not be buying. And God forbid, if they lose their jobs, there will be more delinquencies. So the question is, what should you do if you are a first-time home buyer? What we need to do is ask the right questions. I get this question a lot. Is this the right market to buy? And this is a wrong question. You should not be asking this question because no one can predict what Biden would do tomorrow, what Justin Trudeau would do, how elections would come into play. The Russia-Ukraine war took everyone by surprise. You just cannot predict the future and therefore you cannot predict the market. The right question to ask here is, am I ready to buy? Do I have an emergency fund? Do I have a stable job? Do I really need to buy a house right now? As a couple, do I really need to buy a detached house which is much bigger than what I need right now? The second thing that we need to avoid, my bank gave me an eligibility of $1 million and therefore I will buy for $1 million. That's the wrong mindset. The right mindset is I need to ensure that my home related expenses are under 35% of my net household income. Now, if you go on my website, you can actually download this calculator, which is called the Rule of 35 calculator. And what you should do is we should just look at our net monthly household income. This is after tax, including incentives, fixed bonuses, side hustles. If you have a side hustle and you're making, $500 a month additional, add that here. But this is your overall income that is coming through the door in your bank account every single month after taxes. So let's say you're making $10,000. If you're a couple, making $10,000 that, you're getting into your bank accounts. Are you expecting your income to increase by 10% in the next 12 months? Maybe you're getting an appraisal in April. If the answer is, no, then you just type no here. And if the answer is yes, you just say yes here. And by how much? Let's say there's an increase of 10% that you are expecting. And then how much down payment do you have saved? Let's say you have $60,000 saved. And do you have an emergency fund of $25,000? And if the answer is no, and this is over and above the down payment and the closing cost, right? So if the answer is no, then you just type no here. And if the answer is yes, you just type yes. Now, let's say you do not have the emergency fund here and you just type no here, and I'll explain what happens, if you say yes. Now, the overall expenses, let's say you're making about $10,000, but you are bound, for a 10% increment, and therefore you'll be making $11,000. You can spend now 35% of $11,000 towards your home related expenses. And let's say that is $3,850. Let's say that you do not have a condo fee. It's a freehold house that you're buying. Monthly utilities come to about $200. It's slightly higher, I would say about, $200 to $300, but let's say $200 for now. And then max monthly mortgage payment you can afford is, let's say, $3,350 in this case. Now, I have not even taken insurance here. I'm just taking the basic expenses here, but let's assume that you cannot afford more than $3,350 of mortgage payment here. And that basically means that your overall expenses are $3,850, which is 35% of $11,000 that you're going to make after your increment. And this mortgage payments puts our purchase price, including the down payment, at about $676,000. So if you buy a house which is about this value, you would make sure that you are not spending too much, and only 35% of your net household income is being used towards house related expenses. Now, let's say you have an emergency fund and you say, yes, I have an emergency fund of $25,000 after my down payment and closing cost. Then your budget will increase. And the reason is because instead of rule of 35, now you can apply the rule of 40. Because if something goes wrong, you can still default to your emergency fund till the time you get back on your feet. Let's say you lose your job, you have the emergency fund to fund your mortgage till the time you get the job back. Now, my recommendation is only buy a house when you have an emergency fund, because in this economical environment, I would not bet on us having a job forever. Now, one assumption that I've taken in this calculator is I've calculated the mortgage payments at 4% interest rates. Right now, the interest rates are about 5% or 5.2%. Depending on the term that you go for and the amount of down payment. The reason why I've taken 4% here is because the 25-year average of interest rates is 4%. So I'm taking a long-term average to do these numbers, because obviously you can't, the interest rates go up and down. I have to take one number. And even though at 5% you will be spending a little bit more right now, instead of 35%, you will be probably doing 40 or 42%. But eventually, long-term, because your home purchase is a long-term purchase, you will default to about 35%. And by then your incomes will also increase. So obviously there are certain limitations to this calculator, but it's a good benchmark. I would highly recommend that you download it from the link in the bio and do the numbers accordingly. Or what you can do is simply book a call from the description below, and me or my team members will make a plan for you depending on your personal situation. The third thing that we need to avoid is I have to buy a freehold home. Condo fees is a waste of money. That's not true. I've talked about this a million times on this channel. I'll also link a video in the description where I talked about the expenses of condos versus home, and they are not very different, because home purchases also have a lot of maintenance versus condo fee. Everything is included in the condo fee, and therefore you don't pay for a lot for utilities, and there's not much of a maintenance. The only reason why you buy a house over a condo is because you need more space, because that's an advantage that condo doesn't have. However, condo fees is not a waste of money. The right mindset is my first home is not my dream home. Let's buy a condo because no one else is buying. The reason why I'm saying this is, yes, we are seeing an increase in the home prices right now for freehold homes, but the condos are down almost 30 to 35%, in some cases almost 40% from their peak. I have clients right now who are buying around the Toronto area almost 200,000 lower than the peak, and all those people, when the market goes up, stand to gain the most. So if you do not need space right now, and you realize that your first home will not be your forever home, it's not the worst decision to buy a condo. And the fourth and the most important thing that you need to avoid is, my realtor says it's a crazy market with multiple offers. We have to act now. We have to increase our offer. We have to put unconditional offers. And looking at the numbers right now of the real estate market, I don't think we are there yet. And therefore, the right mindset is, let me work with a power team who can still get us the deals under market value whenever I'm ready. You need to work with a team that does not create any FOMO. They're acting in your interest and not just for their commissions. And before you say that there's no realtor or mortgage agent that exists, that's where we exist. In my team, my realtors, my lawyers, my mortgage agents, they are all the same. There are so many people who are buying for $1 million, but we reduce their purchase price by about $300,000 because that's what they can afford based on their incomes. And therefore, it's really critical that you work with a team which is working in your favor long term. Because you're buying your first home, they've bought their first homes, they know the pains of owning their first home, and therefore from that experience, you can all learn and not make the same mistakes that other people do. That's all I have for today. 60% of people who are watching this video do not actually subscribe to the channel. So I would highly recommend that if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that so that more of these videos reach more people. We just reached 10,000 followers and I would love to reach 20,000 followers in the next 6 months. So if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and I promise you that I'll come up with more amazing videos going forward. मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में, तब तक के लिए bye bye.